Hello, all of you vaingloriously wonderful people. Up until last week, the marbles that you encounter in your journey as an Astroneer were nice to look at, but they didn't seem to do anything. There were three variants: Zebra, Leopard, and Checkered. Some say the marbles were an object that the developers used to test out the physics or lighting in the game, and they were left in accidentally. Others will tell you that they encountered all three marbles during early access, only to find that the Leopard and Checkered marble had disappeared on the launch of 1.0. Those people will go on to say that the Leopard and Checkered marbles were later reintroduced as a reward for Astroneer winning awards. But those in the know, those of us who have truly dug deep into Astroneer, knew the truth. These were not mere marbles. They were Lord Zebra, Lord Leo, and Lord Checkers, and their purpose was to accept our praise and admiration. But with the controls update last week, all of that was seemingly turned on its head when our marble friends suddenly began behaving in new ways. I made a very brief mention of this in my video covering the controls update, but I did not want to completely spoil it for anyone right away. But since the community has been abuzz with chatter about the marbles' new skills, I figured it was safe to go ahead and talk about them. So if you look closely at the marbles, you will find that they now include a tooltip that appears when you hover your cursor over them. That tooltip includes a mention that each marble was part of some failed experiment. Of course, players across the universe completely ignore the advice of that tooltip to immediately discard the marbles. I mean, no one would try to get rid of a marble, right? Well, maybe. Anyway, the messages on the marbles also contain a bit of information. While some of the information is redacted and some even appears encoded, we can begin to piece together that some sort of experiments were taking place that involve these marbles. Certain behaviors were observed and required more testing. We learned that there were newly developed marbles with hints of potentially shifting patterns. Other messages reference replication and research being abandoned. And there is my personal favorite. Some have even reported hearing the marbles whispering. I'm not going to go through each and every message that you may encounter. I don't want to spoil everything. This tooltip also brings a new option to the marbles. You can hold the appropriate key to examine them. And when you do, an Einstein-Rosen bridge appears and the marble vanishes. A second Einstein-Rosen bridge, also known as a wormhole or a rift in time and space, appears nearby and a marble appears inside of it. More often than not, the marble that appears will be a completely different variant. And it is through this process that you will most likely discover that two new variants of the marbles have arrived. We now have Lord Dragon and Lord Hypno. While there is a chance that you can encounter these new variants in the wild, you can also simply keep examining the marble until you land on one of the new variants. But there is something about the name of each marble and the encoded writing that keeps me wondering. They are lords, and they can travel through rifts in time and space. Could marbles be Time Lord technology? Maybe they're bigger on the inside. I mean, if Time Lords can send messages across all of time and space in glowing cubes, who is to say a glowing marble isn't an ancient remnant of Gallifrey? And maybe, just maybe, we can't read some of the text that appears because it's in Gallifreyan. But speaking of that encoded text, you might remember seeing it appear in other places during your adventures as an Astroneer. Remember the mission, Bait and Switch? It too contained this strange encoded text. And once you complete that mission, you are rewarded with the strange object, which also contains more of this encoded text. And once you use the strange object, it becomes the Xenobiology Lab. And hey, wait a minute, how did that massive lab fit inside of that tiny little strange object? Is the strange object bigger on the inside? Or have I just been binging too much Doctor Who? Anyway, the Xenobiology Lab Records and Analysis Data Log also contains more of this encoded text. If you complete all of the snail-related missions, this text is eventually decoded and we can read it in English. I wonder, if I or someone else were to take the time to compare the encoded text from the Xenobiology Lab and its English translation to the encoded text that we see on tooltips from the marbles, if maybe, just maybe we could translate these messages. Moving on, in the past, Lord Zebra was by far the most social of the marbles and could be found more often than Lord Leo or Lord Checkers. Anyone who has gone hunting for these marbles could tell you that. But just in case we need proof, I happen to have one magical save created before the controls update where marbles are everywhere. Hundreds, if not thousands of them are scattered and rolling about on the ground. And if you look up, you will see hundreds more suspended midair, reaching as high as the clouds and scattered as far as the eye can see. And while it seems a few Lord Hypnos and Lord Dragons have found their way into this save, it is fairly easy to observe that the vast majority of the marbles in this ancient save are indeed Lord Zebra. But if you jump into a save today and turn on creative mode, you can easily replicate a ton of marbles for yourself and find that the chances for all 5 variants is now roughly equal. In fact, let's do that now. I'm going to spam the enter button on my keyboard until my PC begins to beg for mercy. Here goes. Yeah, that should be a couple hundred marbles. And if you look closely, you will see all 5 variants represented in fairly equal number. Granted, I am not about to stop and count them all to be certain, but a first glance seems to indicate a solid balance. Some of them do appear to be making an escape down a ramp leading deep underground, but still there is a good balance there. Finally, the marbles also have one more secret that they have been holding on to. But I have to give a huge disclaimer here. You should never, under any circumstances, attempt what I am about to do. It's cruel, and if you do it, you might just be a monster. But today, in this very controlled setting, and in the name of science, I will demonstrate to you that marbles will provide scrap if blown up. So we have a huge pile of marbles. Let's go ahead and add in a small bit of dynamite. That should do it. Again, I must caution you against what I am about to do. Such violent actions simply should not be taken against such beautiful objects. Like I said, I'm only doing it for science. So let's detonate the dynamite and see what happens. Well, aside from killing my frame rate for a split second and making a big hole, there seems to have been a failed experiment. I don't see any scrap. So, maybe the explosion was too big. Let's try again, this time with significantly less marbles and dynamite for science. There we go. We got some scrap this time. And if we try it again on this smaller scale, we'll get scrap again. But I cannot stress this enough. Please do not blow up marbles. It's just rude and mean and makes you a monster who probably hates puppies and ice cream. With all of this newly discovered marble behavior and clues into research that was being performed on them, a lot of mystery remains surrounding our marble friends. We still don't know where they came from. We still do not know what purpose they serve beyond accepting our praise and admiration. And most likely, we still don't know what the encoded text means. Hopefully more will be revealed in the future, but until then, I'm Brandon, reminding you to stay vainglorious.